I pressed send on the email at 11:47 p.m., and in that instant I destroyed my niece's future. $150,000. 3 years of anonymous funding. Gone. The cursor blinked on the confirmation screen as Margaret Wells, director of the Metropolitan Dance Academy, received my scholarship termination notice. Student ID 2847. Laylee Morrison. My brother's daughter would wake up tomorrow to a phone call that would shatter everything she thought she knew about her merit-based success. 30 days to pay $50,000 or face expulsion. I closed my laptop with a quiet click, walked to my kitchen window, and stared at the city lights below while holding my grandmother's broken platinum necklace in my palm. The 3 diamonds caught the reflection of the streetlights, fractured and dull. I waited for guilt to come, for regret, for anything. But all I felt was the cold, crystalline clarity of someone who had finally stopped being a doormat. If you've ever been treated like you're worthless by people you've sacrificed everything for, stay with me. This story gets intense. And if you've made it this far, hit that like button and subscribe, because you're about to witness what happens when kindness is mistaken for weakness. Drop a comment if you've ever had to cut off someone you love to save yourself. Let me take you back to where this all started 6 hours earlier at what was supposed to be a celebration. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror that Thursday evening, fastening the platinum necklace around my neck. 3 flawless diamonds caught the light, refracting it into tiny rainbows across my collarbone. This wasn't just jewelry. This was my grandmother's legacy, 80 years of her resilience compressed into 18 grams of precious metal and carbon. She'd bought it in 1945 with her factory wages, saving $5 a week for 2 years, while rationing food during the final months of World War II. The necklace had survived the Great Depression mentality that shaped my mother's turbulent youth and now rested against my skin as a reminder of where I came from. The diamonds weren't large or ostentatious. They were perfect in their subtlety, each one carefully selected by a woman who understood the difference between value and price. I'd had it appraised 3 years ago when updating my insurance. $18,000. The jeweler had held it with reverence, explaining how the craftsmanship was nearly impossible to replicate today, how the platinum was a purer grade than most modern pieces, how the setting itself was a work of art from a bygone era. I wore simple black slacks and a cream cashmere sweater. Nothing flashy. I'd learned a long time ago that real wealth whispers while insecurity shouts. My phone buzzed as I grabbed my car keys. Sarah's voice came through, cheerful and warm. Sarah, my college roommate turned lifelong best friend, the only person who knew about my anonymous charitable work. We'd been planning the Children's Advocacy Fund gala for months. Claire, don't forget next Thursday's charity gala. The dean of the Metropolitan Arts Conservatory will be there. For your secret project. I smiled, despite the knot forming in my stomach about tonight's dinner. I'm not sure how much longer I can keep it secret, Sarah. 3 years of watching Laylee dance, knowing I'm funding her dream while her mother treats me like I'm some kind of charity case myself. Sarah had been telling me for months to either reveal myself or stop the funding. You can't pour from an empty cup, Claire. And Julia's been draining you dry for years. I know, but Laylee has real talent. She deserves the opportunity. The drive to Mark's house took 25 minutes through tree-lined suburban streets that got progressively more affluent with each mile. My older brother had married Julia Hartwell 8 years ago, ascending into a social stratosphere that seemed to require looking down on everyone below. Their house was a monument to appearance over substance, a sprawling Tudor revival with a 3-car garage and professionally landscaped grounds that cost more monthly than most people's mortgages. I pulled into the circular driveway behind Julia's white Range Rover and Mark's Tesla. Through the illuminated windows, I could see crystal chandeliers and what looked like catered staff moving through the dining room. This was supposed to be a small family birthday dinner for my mother. Leave it to Julia to turn it into a production. The front door opened before I could knock. Mark stood there in a tailored shirt and expensive watch, looking every inch the successful financial consultant he pretended to be. I knew the truth. I'd bailed him out of a failed real estate investment 2 years ago, quietly transferring $30,000 to cover his losses before Julia found out. He'd never paid me back. Never even acknowledged it beyond a mumbled thank you over drinks one night. Claire, you made it. Come in, come in. Mom's already here. He couldn't quite meet my eyes as he took my coat. That was Mark's signature move, looking just past you while pretending everything was fine. 20 years of watching him avoid conflict had taught me that my brother had the spine of a jellyfish. The house smelled like expensive candles and roasted lamb. I walked through the marble foyer into the living room where my mother sat perched on a cream-colored sofa looking uncomfortable among all the luxury. Mom had worked as a nurse for 40 years, raised 2 kids alone after Dad died, and never quite knew what to do with her hands in Julia's showroom of a home. Happy birthday, Mom. I handed her a small wrapped box containing a first edition of her favorite novel, something I'd tracked down through a rare book dealer. Personal, meaningful, and completely understated. Oh, Claire, you shouldn't have. But her eyes lit up as she unwrapped it, running her fingers over the cloth cover with genuine joy. This is beautiful, honey. How did you even find this? Before I could answer, Julia swept into the room like she was making an entrance at the Met Gala. She wore a floor-length emerald dress that probably cost more than my car payment, dripping with jewelry that screamed, "Look at me." Her eyes immediately locked onto my grandmother's necklace, and I watched her expression shift from false friendliness to barely concealed contempt. Oh, still wearing that old necklace, Claire. You really do hang on to those sentimental pieces, don't you? I mean, it's kind of like flea market jewelry, if I'm being honest. But I guess simplicity has its own charm. For some people, the room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Laylee, 15 years old and scrolling through her phone on the adjacent chair, looked up with that expression, teenagers perfect, the one that broadcasts bored disdain for everything around them. Her eyes flicked to my necklace, and I saw her mother's influence in the slight curl of her lip. Mark's laugh was forced and hollow. Julia, come on. It's Mom's birthday. Let's keep things nice, okay? Julia waved her hand dismissively, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the light. Of course, of course. I'm just saying we all have our priorities. Speaking of which, did I mention Laylee's tuition statement came today? $50,000 a year, can you imagine? But we'd do absolutely anything for our daughter's dreams. The Metropolitan Dance Academy only accepts the most talented students. It's merit-based, you know. They don't just let anyone in. The implication hung in the air like poison gas. Julia had perfected the art of the insult, disguised as conversation, the backhanded compliment that left you feeling small while she maintained plausible deniability. I'd endured 8 years of these verbal paper cuts, each one tiny but cumulative death by 1,000 condescensions. I sat down across from them, placing my purse beside me, and said nothing. I'd learned that silence unnerved Julia more than confrontation. Let her fill the void with her own insecurity. Dinner was a theatrical production. The dining room table could have seated 12, but held only 5 of us, making the space feel simultaneously grand and isolating. Julia had hired caterers who brought out course after course on bone china plates, each presentation more elaborate than the last. She spent most of the meal talking about Laylee's upcoming performance, the connections she was making with important people in the dance world, the summer intensive program in New York that would cost another $15,000. We're investing in excellence, Julia declared, gesturing with her wine glass. That's what sets our family apart. We understand that greatness requires sacrifice. Mark nodded along like a dashboard bobblehead, offering nothing of substance to the conversation. My mother tried to shift topics several times, asking about my work, but Julia steamrolled over every attempt. Claire does financial consulting or something, right? Julia's tone suggested I sold vacuum cleaners door to door. I'm sure that's nice for her. Very practical. I smiled and cut my lamb into precise pieces. Yes, Julia, financial consulting. Very practical. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I managed a portfolio worth north of $3 million for high-net-worth clients, that I'd built my career through careful planning and smart investments, that the simple life I lived was a choice, not a limitation. I'd learned from my grandmother that true security came from having what you needed, not displaying what you wanted others to think you had. The real chaos started after dinner, in that liminal space where everyone's too full to leave but too uncomfortable to relax. We'd moved back into the living room. Mom was showing Laylee photos on her phone, trying to bridge the generational gap with pictures of family trips from decades past. Mark had retreated to refresh drinks. Julia was holding court about some charity luncheon she'd attended, dropping names like breadcrumbs for social climbers. I was sitting in an armchair near the window when Laylee approached me. There was something predatory in her posture, a learned behavior that made my stomach tighten. She'd been watching her mother all night, absorbing every cutting remark, every dismissive gesture. Aunt Claire, that necklace is really what my mom said, isn't it? It looks so cheap and flimsy. I can't believe you wear that to nice places. Her voice carried across the room. Julia looked over, and I saw the flash of satisfaction in her eyes before she schooled her expression into maternal concern. "Laylee, that's not polite," she said, but her tone held no real reproof. It was the voice of someone going through the motions of parenting while secretly approving of the behavior. I stood up slowly, instinctively bringing my hand to the necklace. "Laylee, this belonged to your great-grandmother. It's very special to me. Please be respectful." But Laylee had her phone out now recording, because everything in her generation needed to be content. She stepped closer, reaching out before I could react and grab the chain. "Special. It looks like costume jewelry." Mom was right. "You really should get something nicer if you're going to wear necklaces." Laylee let go. "Now." My voice was sharp, sharper than I'd ever used with her. She didn't let go. She pulled first as if to examine it, then harder when I tried to step back. I saw the exact moment she decided to escalate that teenage cruelty that hasn't yet learned consequences. She yanked with both hands, her face twisted in something between amusement and challenge. The sound of the clasp breaking was impossibly loud in my ears, a metallic snap that seemed to echo off Julia's high ceilings. The platinum chain fell away from my neck, the 3 diamonds scattering light as the necklace dangled from Laylee's hand. "Oops," she said, and she was smiling. "I guess cheap stuff breaks easily, huh?" Laylee's younger siblings, twins aged 12, started laughing from where they'd been playing video games in the corner. Old lady Jevalry. "That's what you get for wearing ancient stuff." Julia appeared at Laylee's shoulder with the speed of someone who'd been waiting for exactly this moment. "Oh, Claire. I'm so sorry, but honestly, these old pieces are so fragile. This is probably a good thing. Now you can get something modern, something that won't fall apart. You can't go around wearing broken antiques, people will laugh." There was triumph in her voice, thinly veiled by false sympathy. This was what she'd wanted, what all the verbal jabs had been building toward. Proof that I was less than that, my choices were inferior, that my sentimental attachments were weaknesses to be exploited. I bent down and picked up my grandmother's necklace from where Laylee had dropped it on the Persian rug. The clasp was destroyed, the chain kinked where she'd wrenched it. I held it in my palm, feeling the weight of 80 years of history, and something inside me that had been bending for 8 years finally snapped clean through. I looked up at Julia, then at Laylee, then at Mark, who had appeared in the doorway with drinks frozen like a deer in headlights. When I spoke, my voice was quiet but carried a weight that made everyone in the room go still. "You're going to pay for this contempt. All of you." Mark started to stammer something, but I was already walking toward the door. My mother tried to follow me, but I held up my hand. "I need to go, Mom. I'm sorry your birthday ended like this. I'll call you tomorrow." The drive home was a blur of streetlights and righteous anger. My hands were steady on the wheel, my breathing controlled, but inside I was calculating. I wasn't sad. I wasn't crying. I was done. My apartment was a sanctuary of minimalism, and calm the opposite of Julia's suffocating showcase. I made myself a cup of strong black tea, the kind my grandmother used to drink, and sat down at my desk. My laptop screen glowed to life, casting blue light across my face. I opened my email and pulled up my encrypted files. 3 years of records. Every payment, every scholarship disbursement, every carefully worded anonymous donation to the Metropolitan Dance Academy. I'd established the funding through a private trust, routed through my firm's charitable foundation, completely untraceable to me personally. Margaret Wells, the Academy's director, knew me as a philanthropic client. We'd met at a gala 3 years ago, hit it off over champagne, and shared views on arts education, and I'd mentioned my interest in supporting promising young dancers. I'd watched Laylee perform at a small community showcase when she was 12. The kid had real talent, genuine passion in every movement. She'd cried backstage when she thought no one was watching, overwhelmed by the joy of dance. That was before Julia had gotten her hooks in, deep before the academy and the pressure and the toxic lessons about worth and value. I'd wanted to give her a chance. A real chance, free from the burden of knowing it came from the aunt her mother taught her to despise. Merit-based scholarship, Julia had crowed. What a joke. I began typing. The first email was to Margaret Wells, sent from my professional account. "Margaret, regarding the anonymous scholarship for Laylee Morrison, student ID 2847. I am writing to inform you of the immediate and permanent withdrawal of all funding effective as of tonight, Thursday, 10:34 p.m. The 3-year commitment is hereby terminated. All future tuition payments are the responsibility of the family. Please process this change in your system tonight and notify the family first thing Friday morning. The decision is final and irreversible. I trust you'll handle this with the discretion our arrangement has always maintained." I hit send without hesitation. $150,000 over 3 years. $50,000 per year paid quarterly for a child whose mother had just stood by while she destroyed an $18,000 family heirloom and called it trash. The second email went to a generic account I'd set up years ago for family communications, something that couldn't be traced directly to me in the moment but would be clear enough in hindsight. The merit-based scholarship supporting Laylee Morrison at Metropolitan Dance Academy has been withdrawn by the anonymous donor effective immediately. The Academy will contact you Friday morning regarding outstanding tuition. Payment is due within 30 days. The donor's decision is final. I sat back and stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I opened another file. This was the accounting I'd kept for myself, the private ledger of exactly how much I'd invested in Mark's family over the years. The $30,000 bailout for his real estate disaster. The $5,000 loan that became a gift when Julia wanted to renovate their kitchen. The $8,000 I'd spent on their vacation when Mark's business had a slow quarter and he'd asked me to keep it quiet from Julia. 12 years of Christmases and birthdays where I'd spent twice what they ever spent on me trying to be the good sister, the generous aunt. The total came to $216,000. Money I'd given freely, never expecting repayment because that's what family did. But family also didn't teach their children to destroy heirlooms while filming it for social media. Family didn't stand by while cruelty was disguised as honesty. I called the jeweler I'd used for my appraisal, left a voicemail about bringing the necklace in for repair. Then I poured myself 2 fingers of whiskey, sat on my balcony and waited. The phone started ringing at 9:47 a.m. Friday morning. I was at my desk working through client portfolios when Mark's name lit up my screen. I let it go to voicemail. He called back immediately. Then again. On the 4th call, I answered. Claire, thank God. We need to talk about this email. What email? What's going on? His voice was panic, pure and simple. I could hear Julia in the background, her shrill tone demanding to know what was happening. An email from the Dance Academy. They're saying Laylee's scholarship has been withdrawn. Effective immediately. They want $50,000 in 30 days or she's expelled. Claire, this has to be a mistake. We need your help figuring this out. I took a sip of my coffee, let the silence stretch. Why would you need my help with that, Mark? Because you're good with this stuff. Financial stuff. Maybe someone hacked the system or there's been an error. You have to help us fix this. I could picture him pacing their kitchen, probably still in his pajamas, running his hands through his hair the way he did when stressed. Julia would be standing there in her silk robe, face pale under her morning skincare routine, finally experiencing what it felt like when the floor dropped out. There's no error, Mark. The donor withdrew their support. That's what happens when you raise a child to destroy other people's treasures and call them garbage. The line went quiet. I heard Julia shriek something unintelligible, then the sound of the phone being grabbed away. Claire, you can't be serious. You cannot destroy Laylee's future over a necklace. This is insane. You're being vindictive and cruel. Julia's voice was pure venom, all pretense of civility abandoned. I'd never heard her like this, stripped of her social polish. I'm not destroying anything, Julia. I'm simply declining to fund it. That necklace you and your daughter called cheap costume jewelry, it was appraised at $18,000 3 years ago. It's probably worth more now. It was my grandmother's, purchased in 1945 with her factory wages during wartime rationing. She wore it on her wedding day to my father's funeral and gave it to me on her deathbed. But sure, it's just old junk that deserves to be ripped off someone's neck while being mocked. She sputtered, searching for words. That still doesn't justify ruining Laylee's education over material things. You're being petty. Let's talk about that merit-based scholarship you love to brag about at dinner parties, Julia. The one that proves Laylee's exceptional talent was recognized by the prestigious Metropolitan Dance Academy. Want to know the truth? I didn't wait for her answer. That scholarship wasn't merit-based. It was Claire-based. I've been paying $50,000 a year for 3 years through an anonymous trust. $150,000 total. I set it up after watching Laylee at a community showcase when she was 12 before your toxicity fully infected her. I wanted her to have opportunities without the burden of knowing it came from the aunt you taught her to despise. The silence on the other end was absolute. I could hear Julia's breathing quick and shallow. You're lying, she finally said, but her voice wavered. You're a nobody. You live in a tiny apartment and drive a 10-year-old car and wear old lady jewelry. You couldn't possibly have that kind of money. I smiled even though she couldn't see it. I'm a senior financial consultant managing portfolios worth over $3 million, Julia. I drive a 10-year-old paid-off car because I don't need to impress anyone. I live in a small apartment because I prefer minimalism to clutter. I wear old lady jewelry because it has more value in one clasp than your entire collection of statement pieces. Real wealth doesn't announce itself at dinner parties. I heard Mark in the background, his voice rising. Is this true? Claire, is this actually true? Julia was still on the line, and now she was crying. Those weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of rage and humiliation. You had no right to do this without telling us. We would have behaved differently if we'd known. And there it was. The complete absence of self-awareness. They would have behaved differently not because it was right, but because there was money involved. Because I might have been useful instead of disposable. That's exactly the problem, Julia. You treat people based on what you think they can give you. You taught your daughter that sentimental value is worthless, that old things are trash, that people like me who don't perform wealth are beneath you. And now you're facing the consequences of that worldview. Mark grabbed the phone back. Claire, please. We can fix this. We'll make Laylee apologize. We'll replace your necklace. Just don't do this to her. She's just a kid. She made a mistake. She's 15 years old, Mark. Old enough to know that destroying someone's property while calling it garbage is wrong. Old enough to learn that actions have consequences. You and Julia spent years teaching her that contempt is acceptable as long as you smile while delivering it. Congratulations. This is what that lesson cost. The scholarship is done, I continued. It's not coming back. Not if Laylee apologizes. Not if you grovel. Not if Julia finally admits she spent 8 years treating me like I'm trash at your family dinners. The money is gone. But here's what happens next. You're going to sit down with your daughter and explain that her behavior has consequences. You're going to examine how you've parented her, what values you've instilled, and whether raising a child to mock and destroy is really the legacy you want to leave. And maybe, just maybe, if you all take a long, hard look in the mirror, we can rebuild something resembling a family relationship. But it won't include my money. That ship has sailed. Julia was screaming now, I could hear her clearly. You can't do this. We'll sue you. We'll tell everyone what you did. You'll be ruined. Tell whoever you want, Julia. Explain to all your country club friends how you lost your daughter's scholarship because you couldn't teach her basic respect. I'm sure that'll go over wonderfully. And as for suing me, I never signed anything with you. The scholarship was an anonymous donation that I'm free to withdraw at any time. My lawyers made sure of that from the beginning. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking slightly, adrenaline coursing through my system, but I felt lighter than I had in years. The next few days were a storm. My phone exploded with texts. Mark sent paragraphs of pleading alternating between begging and passive-aggressive guilt trips. Julia sent vitriol disguised as concern, telling me I was mentally unstable, that I was jealous of their success, that I'd always been bitter about not having children of my own. That last one almost made me laugh. I'd chosen not to have children because I'd seen what kind of parent Julia was, and I knew I'd rather have no kids than raise them in toxicity. My mother called, devastated and confused. Claire, honey, I don't understand what happened. Mark told me about the scholarship. Is it true? Why didn't you tell me? I met her for coffee Saturday morning at her favorite diner, the kind of place with vinyl booths and waitresses who'd worked there for decades. I explained everything. The scholarship. The years of casual cruelty. The destroyed necklace. The decision to cut off funding. She listened without interrupting, her coffee growing cold in front of her. When I finished, she reached across the table and took my hands. I failed you, she said quietly. I knew Julia was difficult. I saw how she treated you at family gatherings. But I told myself it wasn't my place to interfere, that you girls needed to work it out. I'm so sorry, Claire. Mom, you didn't fail me. You taught me to be kind even when kindness isn't returned. But you also taught me through Grandma's example that kindness doesn't mean being a doormat. Grandma didn't survive the depression by letting people walk all over her. She survived by knowing her worth and protecting it. My mother squeezed my hands. Your grandmother would be proud of you. And heartbroken about the necklace. I'm getting it repaired. The jeweler says he can fix it, though the new clasp will be different. A reminder that some breaks can heal, but they leave marks. The calls and texts continued. Tuesday afternoon, Laylee herself messaged me. It was a long, rambling thing, starting with anger, shifting to bargaining, ending in panic. Aunt Claire, please don't do this. The academy called today. They said I have to leave if we don't pay by next Friday. This is my whole life. Dance is everything to me. You can't take it away because of a stupid necklace. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. I typed and deleted several versions before settling on the truth. Laylee, this isn't about a stupid necklace. This is about you not knowing the value of things because you've never been taught. That necklace was worth $18,000, but more importantly, it was irreplaceable. You grabbed it, broke it, deliberately, called it trash and laughed. Your mother stood there and agreed with you. Your father said nothing. That taught you that cruelty is acceptable as long as the victim doesn't seem important. I won't restore the scholarship, but I hope you learn something from this. Real value isn't always visible, and the people you dismiss might be the ones holding up your entire world. She didn't respond. Wednesday, Mark called from a different number, probably hoping I wouldn't recognize it. I answered out of morbid curiosity. Claire, we're disparate. Julia's trying to sell some of her jewelry, but it's not worth as much as she thought. I've been looking into loans, but with our mortgage and the car payments, we can't qualify for enough. Laylee is devastated. She won't eat. Won't talk to us. Please just consider helping us this one last time. I closed my eyes, pinched the bridge of my nose. Mark, do you know what you just said? Julia's jewelry isn't worth what she thought. She's been wearing her wealth-performing status, and it turns out most of it is overpriced retail that loses value the moment you leave the store. Meanwhile, the necklace she called costume jewelry was worth more than her entire collection combined. Do you see the irony? I see that my daughter is suffering because you're angry. Your daughter is suffering because you and Julia taught her that cruelty doesn't have consequences. This is the consequence. And Mark, I want you to hear this clearly. I've given your family over $200,000 over the past dozen years. The scholarship, the real estate bailout, the kitchen loan that you never paid back, the vacation I funded, birthday gifts, Christmas presents, dinners I paid for while Julia insulted me. I did all of it because I loved you and wanted to support you. But love without respect isn't love. It's exploitation. I'm done being exploited. I hung up and blocked his number. Then I blocked Julia's. I kept my mother's line open, but I made it clear I wasn't discussing Mark's family with her. Thursday afternoon, I picked up my grandmother's necklace from the jeweler. Mr. Chen, 76 years old and a master craftsman, had worked on it personally. He'd repaired the chain, reinforced the setting, and created a new clasp that was both functional and beautiful. I wept when this came in, he told me, his weathered hands cradling the necklace like it was made of spider silk. The platinum purity, the craftsmanship, the history in every link. And then you told me how it was damaged. By family. He shook his head. The greatest treasures are always destroyed by those who cannot see their value. I paid him double his asking price. He tried to refuse, but I insisted. Some things are worth more than money, Mr. Chen. Like knowing there are still people who recognize beauty when they see it. Friday came. The deadline. My phone stayed silent until 3:17 p.m. Mark's name appeared on my screen from yet another new number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. She's expelled. His voice was hollow. Laylee got the official notice this morning. She's out of the Metropolitan Dance Academy. 8 years of work gone. She's in her room right now, hasn't come out all day. Julia is barely speaking to me. This is destroying our family. I sat in my office chair looking out at the city skyline through my window. I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No regret. Just the cold clarity of someone who'd finally stopped setting themselves on fire to keep others warm. Mark, I'm sorry Laylee is hurt. I genuinely am. She's a kid caught in the crossfire of her parents' toxicity. But this isn't destroying your family. Your family was already poisoned. This is just the moment where the poison finally showed symptoms you couldn't ignore. There was a long pause. Then quietly, I don't know how to fix this. You start by looking at what you taught your daughter about respect, about value, about how to treat people. You look at how Julia has spoken to me about me in front of your children for 8 years. You look at your own silence, your complicity in letting it happen. And then you decide if you want to raise a human being who thinks destroying other people's treasures is funny, or if you want to do better. If we do better, would you consider reconnecting with us? Not the money. Just the relationship. I thought about my grandmother working in that factory during the war, saving nickels and dimes, teaching my mother that dignity was non-negotiable. Maybe. In time. If the change is real and sustained. If Laylee learns this lesson instead of just resenting me for teaching it. If Julia ever looks in the mirror and sees what she's become. But Mark, I need you to understand something. The scholarship isn't coming back. Not now. Not ever. That door is closed. Your family needs to find another way forward, and it can't involve expecting me to fund it. I understand, he said, though I wasn't sure he did. Then he hung up. Saturday morning, I was at my local coffee shop, laptop open, working on a presentation for a client when an email came through that I wasn't expecting. The subject line read, "From Laylee." No cute emojis. No casual abbreviations. I opened it with trepidation. It was a letter. A real letter, probably 3 pages if printed out, written in the kind of careful prose that suggested multiple drafts. Aunt Claire, I don't know if you'll read this or if it matters anymore, but I need to write it. I'm sorry. Not because I lost my spot at the academy, though, that hurts more than I can explain. I'm sorry because I destroyed something you loved and I didn't care. I called it garbage. I laughed. I even filmed it because I thought it would be funny content. I've been thinking about that moment over and over for the past week, and I can't believe that was me. Except it was me. That's who I've become. Mom always said you were simple. That you didn't understand nice things. That you were happy with your little life and your old stuff. I believed her because it was easier than thinking for myself. When I grabbed your necklace, I wasn't thinking about you or your grandmother or history or value. I was thinking about how Mom would probably laugh later, how my friends would think the video was funny, how it felt powerful to mock something someone else treasured. I'm not at the academy anymore. The official letter came Friday morning. 8 years of training gone. Mom and Dad are fighting constantly. Dad keeps saying this is a consequence of our choices, which makes Mom scream at him. They blame each other, they blame you, they blame me. Nobody wants to admit that we did this to ourselves. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to change your mind about the scholarship. You said in your text that real value isn't always visible, and I finally understand what you meant. I thought value was about price tags and brand names and what other people could see. I thought being better than other people meant having expensive things and going to prestigious schools. Mom taught me that. But you taught me something different this week, even though I fought against learning it. You taught me that I'm not entitled to anything just because I want it. That cruelty has costs. That the people who love you enough to help you don't owe you that help, especially when you treat them like garbage. I found a studio in town. It's small, nothing like the academy, but the teacher is good. She's not impressed by my resume or my attitude. She makes me work. I'm starting over basically because apparently my technique got sloppy when I thought I was already special. I'm not special. I'm just a girl who used to have an opportunity and wasted it by being cruel. Thank you for the 3 years you gave me, even though I didn't know it was you. Thank you for believing I had potential when I was 12 before I got poisoned by Mom's ideas about worth and status. I'm sorry I didn't live up to that potential. I'm sorry I proved you wrong about me. I don't know if I'll ever dance professionally now. The academy was the pipeline to companies and choreographers and everything I dreamed about. But maybe I don't deserve those dreams anymore. Maybe this is what I earned with my choices. I hope your necklace can be fixed. I hope someday I can be the kind of person who sees value in things that matter instead of things that glitter. I'm sorry, Aunt Claire. I'm so sorry. I read it 3 times. There was something raw in the words, something that felt different from the performative apologies I'd received from Mark and Julia. This felt like genuine reckoning, a 15-year-old confronting the ugliness of her own actions without the protective buffer of excuses. I sat there for a long time, my coffee growing cold, trying to decide what I felt. Not kite forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe the beginning of something like hope that the lesson hadn't been completely wasted. I wrote back, keeping it brief. Laylee, I received your letter and I appreciate the honesty in it. The necklace has been repaired. The new clasp is different from the original, a reminder that some things can be fixed, but they're never quite the same. I accept your apology not because it changes my decision about the scholarship, but because growth has to start somewhere. You're discovering something many people never learn, that real worth isn't about what you wear or where you train, it's about who you choose to be when no one's watching. Keep dancing. Not for prestige or status, but because you love it. That passion I saw when you were 12 before all the pressure and poison that was real. Find your way back to that. Your path might look different now, but different doesn't mean lesser. It just means you'll have to work for it instead of having it handed to you. And things we work for, those we actually appreciate. I hit send and closed my laptop. The work wasn't done, not really. Healing rarely happened in straight lines. But it was something. The following Tuesday, I attended the Children's Advocacy Fund gala Sarah had been planning. I wore my grandmother's necklace, the new clasp, visible if you looked closely, a silver repair against the platinum original. It felt right somehow, wearing something that had been broken and mended to an event about helping kids navigate difficult circumstances. Margaret Wells found me during cocktail hour. She was a formidable woman in her 60s, silver hair pulled back in an elegant chignon with the posture of someone who'd spent decades in ballet before transitioning to administration. "Claire, darling, I've been meaning to speak with you privately." She drew me aside to a quieter corner of the ballroom. "I'm assuming you know about the Morrison situation." I kept my expression neutral. "I'm aware the scholarship was withdrawn." She studied me with those sharp, assessing eyes. "I've been in arts education for 40 years. I've seen a lot of talented kids. I've also seen a lot of parents who destroy their children's gifts by making those gifts about themselves." She paused, sipping her champagne. Layli Morrison had extraordinary potential when she first auditioned. Pure joyful movement. By her third year, she'd become technically proficient but emotionally hollow. She danced like someone going through motions to please others, not from any internal fire. I said nothing, letting her continue. "What I'm saying is that sometimes the cruelest thing we can do is keep enabling a situation that's destroying someone." Layli needed to fall Claire. She needed consequences. Her parents needed to face reality. And honestly, the academy needed to be reminded that we're not a finishing school for wealthy families to park their children while teaching them that money buys everything. Margaret smiled, sharp and knowing. I suspect whoever withdrew that scholarship understood all of this. And I suspect that person cares more about Layli's actual well-being than her parents do. She walked away before I could respond, leaving me standing there with a strange mixture of validation and sorrow. The weeks turned into months. I saw my mother regularly Sunday brunches that were just the two of us rebuilding our relationship without the toxicity of forced family dinners. She told me that Mark and Julia had enrolled in family counseling, that they'd had to sell the boat they never used and were cutting back on expenses. That Layli was still dancing at the local studio and had actually started teaching beginner classes to help pay for her own lessons. "Did she ask about me?" I said one Sunday, pushing eggs around my plate. "Every week," my mother replied. "She wants to know if you're okay, if you're happy, if you'll ever forgive her." I thought about that. Forgiveness was complicated. It wasn't a switch you flipped or a gift you handed over. It was a process contingent on genuine change and time, and the willingness of both parties to do the work. "Tell her I'm working on it," I finally said, "and that I hope she's learning to dance for herself again." In early December, almost 6 months after everything imploded, I received a small package at my office. No return address, just my name and business address in careful handwriting. Inside was a program from a local dance showcase, one of those community events held in high school auditoriums with folding chairs and proud parents filming on their phones. A sticky note was attached to the program. Layli's handwriting. "I'm performing next Saturday, 7 p.m. Washington High School. I'm not asking you to come. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I'm still dancing. That I found my way back to loving it without all the pressure and prestige. That I think I'm finally dancing the way you saw me dance when I was 12. Thank you for caring enough to stop me before I completely lost myself. Your niece, Layli." Saturday evening, I stood in the back of that high school auditorium, anonymous in the crowd of families and friends. The production values were nothing like the Metropolitan Dance Academy showcases I'd secretly attended over the years. The lighting was basic. The costumes were clearly homemade. The dancers ranged from tiny 6-year-olds to adults taking classes for fitness. And then Layli took the stage for a solo piece and everything else fell away. She moved like water, like wind, like something untethered from earth. The technical precision was still there, honed by years of expensive training, but now there was something else. Emotion. Story. Soul. She danced like it mattered, like the movement itself was the point rather than the performance of perfection. When she finished, the applause was thunderous in that small space. I saw her eyes scan the crowd as she took her bow, and for just a second they landed on me in the back. I nodded once. She smiled, tentative but real, and I saw tears on her cheeks. I left before the show ended, before anyone could stop me or force a conversation I wasn't ready for. But I'd seen what I needed to see. The lesson had taken root. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. That night, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine and my grandmother's necklace in my hand. The new clasp caught the light from my apartment, different from the original but strong. maybe stronger reinforced by the break and repair. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. So, did you go? Did you see her? I went. She's dancing again. Really dancing, not performing. Are you going to reconcile? I thought about that question, about what reconciliation meant, about whether going back was ever really possible, or if you could only move forward into something new. Maybe. Eventually. On different terms. With boundaries that weren't there before. If the change is real and sustained. But Sarah, the scholarship is never coming back. That part is done. If we rebuild anything, it has to be separate from money and obligation and rescue. It has to be built on actual respect. She sent back a single emoji, a heart, and I smiled. The following Tuesday, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called Mark directly from my main number, no longer hiding or avoiding. He answered on the first ring, voice wary. Claire. I saw Laylee dance on Saturday. At the showcase, a pause. She didn't tell us you were coming. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. But Mark, I need you to hear this. She's good. Really good. Better than she was at the academy, actually, because now she's dancing like she means it. Like it's hers, not Julia's. Not some status symbol or performance of excellence. Just hers. I could hear him breathing, processing. Thank you for going. Thank you for seeing her. I'm not ready to come to family dinners. I'm not ready to pretend everything is fine. The necklace is repaired, but it's scarred, and so am I. But I want you to know that I see the changes you've all been making. I see Laylee taking responsibility for her choices. I see you and Julia in counseling trying to fix what you broke. I see the work. And work matters. Does this mean... His voice cracked slightly. Does this mean we might get you back? Not your money. Just you. Maybe. On my terms. With boundaries. With the understanding that respect isn't negotiable and kindness isn't weakness. That my worth isn't determined by my bank account or my willingness to fund your lifestyle. That family is something you earn through behavior, not something you're entitled to by blood. If you can live with those terms, then maybe we can build something new. Not what we had before. Something better. We can do that, he said quickly. We want to do that. Then prove it. Not with words. With sustained action over time. Show me that the lessons from this nightmare actually changed something fundamental. And Mark, one more thing. Anything. Tell Laylee to keep dancing. Tell her that talent is worthless without character, but character can carry you further than talent ever will. Tell her I'm proud of who she's becoming, even though getting there hurt like hell. I hung up feeling lighter, like I'd set down a weight I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten it was there. The holidays came and went. I spent Thanksgiving with Sarah and her family, Christmas with my mother, at her place, quiet and peaceful, without the performance of Julia's productions. New Year's Eve I spent alone, which was exactly how I wanted it, reflecting on the year that had broken me open and forced me to rebuild myself stronger. In February, nearly a year after the necklace incident, I received another letter from Laylee. This one came to my home address, which meant she'd asked my mother for it, which meant she'd worked up the courage to make that request. Aunt Claire, I'm applying to colleges. Not for dance. For education. I want to teach specifically to teach dance to underprivileged kids who don't have access to expensive studios and snooty academies. I've been teaching beginner classes for almost a year now, and it's the most fulfilling thing I've ever done. Watching little kids discover they can move their bodies in beautiful ways, seeing their faces light up when they master a step, knowing I'm giving them something no one can take away from them. That's what dance should be. That's what I lost for a while and found again because you forced me to. I'm not asking you to pay for college. Mom and Dad have made it clear that's on me, which is fair. I'm working part-time at a coffee shop, and I've applied for financial aid and academic scholarships. Real scholarships, the kind you earn with grades and essays, not the kind that appear mysteriously and disappear when you don't deserve them. I'm learning what it means to build something myself brick by brick instead of having it handed to me. I don't know if we'll ever be close again. I don't know if you'll ever trust me or want me in your life beyond these occasional letters. But I wanted you to know that breaking that necklace was the worst and best thing I ever did. Worst because I hurt someone I should have loved and respected. Best because it shattered the illusion that I was special, that I deserved things just for existing, that other people existed to serve my dreams. I'm a better person now than I was then. Still not good enough probably, but better. And I'm working on it every day. Your niece, who's trying to earn the title. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in a box where I kept important documents. Then I wrote back longer this time with specific advice about college applications and teaching certifications and programs I knew about through my charitable work. Not money, information. The kind of help that required her to do the work but gave her tools to succeed. We started corresponding regularly after that. Letters at first, then occasional emails, then finally a coffee meeting in March at a neutral location. It was awkward. There were long silences and careful phrases and the weight of everything unsaid between us. But it was honest. Real. Not the performance of family, but the messy work of building something authentic from ruins. Julia, I didn't see. Mark, I met for lunch twice, conversations that stayed surface level but civil. My mother told me Julia was struggling, that losing her status symbol, daughter's academy credentials, had been a social death in her circles, that she'd been forced to confront what she'd built her identity on. I felt bad for her in abstract, the way you feel bad for anyone facing their own emptiness. But I didn't reach out. Some relationships aren't meant to be salvaged. Some people have to find their own way through their own darkness. Spring arrived, and with it a sense of new beginnings. I got promoted at work, took on a bigger portfolio, started a nonprofit foundation focused on arts education for underprivileged youth. Anonymous, of course. I'd learned my lesson about visibility and vulnerability. One Saturday in April, I wore my grandmother's necklace to a client meeting. The woman across from me, a sharp-eyed executive in her 50s, noticed it immediately. "That's a beautiful piece." "Vintage." "Yes, it was my grandmother's. It got damaged last year, but I had it repaired." She leaned closer, examining it with the eye of someone who knew jewelry. "That's platinum, isn't it? And those diamonds, my God? This is worth a fortune." I touched the necklace, feeling the new clasp under my fingers. It's worth exactly what it's always been worth. The stories it holds, the resilience it represents, the lessons it taught me about knowing my value and protecting it. She sat back, a smile playing at her lips. "I like you, Claire. I think we're going to work very well together." And we did. That meeting led to a partnership that tripled my client base and established me as one of the top consultants in the region. Success built on competence, integrity, and the kind of quiet confidence that doesn't need validation from people who measure worth in dollars and status. In May, Laylee invited me to her studio's end-of-year performance. Not the main showcase, but a small community outreach program where her beginner students would perform for nursing home residents and families at a local community center. I went and I watched my niece teaching tiny dancers with patience and joy, embodying everything she'd learned the hard way. Afterward, she introduced me to her students. "This is my Aunt Claire. She taught me that real success isn't about being the best, it's about being your best." The kids looked at me with wide eyes, then back at Laylee, then attacked me with questions about being an aunt, and did I see Laylee dance, and wasn't she the best teacher ever? I answered honestly, watched Laylee glow with pride that had nothing to do with prestige and everything to do with purpose. We got frozen yogurt afterward, just the two of us sitting on a bench in the spring sunshine. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. "It means more than you know. Thank you for inviting me. And Laylee, for what it's worth, I'm proud of you. Not for what you lost, but for who you became after losing it." She nodded, eyes bright with tears she didn't let fall. "I'm sorry about the necklace. I'll be sorry for the rest of my life. But I'm grateful for what it taught me, even though I hate how I had to learn it." I touched the new clasp, feeling the difference in the metal. Some things have to break before they can be made stronger. We sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd both been broken and repaired, scarred but functional, different but maybe better. Summer came. My mother had a birthday party, and for the first time in over a year, the whole family was invited. I almost declined. Almost chose the safety of distance over the risk of relapse. But Sarah talked me into it, reminded me that boundaries were something you maintained actively, not something you hid behind. I went. The party was at a park, casual and low-key, nothing like Julia's productions. Mark and Julia were there, subdued, their expensive clothes replaced with normal department store wear. The twins were there, older and a little less obnoxious, shooting me wary glances like I might explode at any moment. And Laylee was there, helping set up tables and serve food, working instead of lounging. Julia and I made eye contact across the picnic tables. She looked away first. Later, when I was helping clean up, she approached me with visible effort. "Claire, thank you for coming. It's Mom's birthday." Of course I came. "I know you don't want to hear this, and I know I don't deserve to say it, but I'm sorry. For everything. For years of treating you like you were less than us. For teaching my kids that kindness was weakness and that status mattered more than substance. For standing by while Laylee destroyed something irreplaceable. She swallowed hard, her pride visibly wrestling with her guilt. You were right about all of it. About me, about our values, about what we were doing to our family. I've been in therapy for months trying to understand how I became this person who measured everyone by their bank balance and their social connections. I'm sorry. I studied her looking for manipulation for the angle for the performance. I found only exhaustion and genuine remorse, the kind that comes from hitting bottom and having to claw your way back up. I appreciate you saying that, Julia. Change is hard. Admitting you were wrong is harder. Keep doing the work. Not for me. For yourself. For your kids. She nodded and walked away, and I felt something inside me unclenching, some knot of anger loosening just slightly. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe the beginning of letting go. The party wound down as the sun set, families packing up coolers and folding chairs. Laylee found me as I was saying goodbye to my mother. Aunt Claire, wait. She held out a small wrapped package. It's not much, but I wanted you to have it. I unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a framed photograph, 8 by 10 professionally shot. It was me in the audience at her April performance, visible in the background, watching her teach with an expression of quiet pride on my face. Below the image she'd written in careful calligraphy, "Real value isn't always visible. Thank you for seeing mine when I couldn't. Thank you for loving me enough to let me fall. Thank you for teaching me that sometimes the greatest gift is the one that gets taken away." I hugged her, something I hadn't done since she was small, before Julia's poison took root. She hugged back fierce and tight, and we stood there for a moment, two people who'd survived the destruction of who they'd been and were slowly building who they could become. As I drove home that evening, the necklace warm against my skin, I thought about my grandmother. About her working in that factory, saving nickels, choosing a piece of jewelry that would last generations. About her teaching, my mother, who taught me that worth wasn't negotiable and dignity wasn't for sale. About how she'd survived wars and depressions and losses that would have broken lesser people. I'd survived too. Different battles, smaller in scope perhaps, but no less important. I'd stood up for my value when it was dismissed. I'd withdrawn support when support became exploitation. I'd broken a relationship that was poisoning everyone in it, endured the fallout, and slowly, carefully built something better from the ruins. The necklace hung around my neck, repaired but scarred, different but functional. A daily reminder of the cost of contempt and the price of self-respect. Every time I fastened the new clasp, I remembered that some things can be fixed, but they're never quite the same. And sometimes different is exactly what you need. Contempt has a price. For Julia and Mark and Laylee, that price was a scholarship, a status symbol, an expensive lesson in humility. For me, the price was a broken heirloom and a shattered family dynamic. But what we all gained, what we bought with that painful currency, was something far more valuable. We gained truth. The truth about who we were, what we'd become, and who we wanted to be. We gained boundaries, the kind that protect without isolating, that say no without saying never. We gained respect earned through actions rather than demanded through relationships. And we gained the knowledge that real value, the kind that matters, the kind that lasts, isn't about what you can afford or where you stand in someone else's hierarchy. It's about knowing your worth, protecting it, refusing to let anyone convince you that their disrespect is something you should tolerate, and having the courage to walk away from anyone, even family, who treats your treasures like garbage. Some lessons can only be taught by letting people experience the consequences of their actions. Some relationships can only be saved by being willing to let them die. And some necklaces, some legacies, some values are worth fighting for, even when fighting means standing alone. My grandmother survived a world war and a depression. I survived a family war and a different kind of depression. We both came out stronger, scarred, but standing different but unbroken. And that, I think, is the real inheritance she left me. Not the necklace, precious as it is, but the knowledge that I could survive anything if I refused to compromise on what mattered most: myself. So I'll ask you this: have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your self-respect? Have you ever realized that someone's been taking advantage of your kindness, mistaking it for weakness? Have you ever had to cut someone off to save yourself, knowing it would hurt but doing it anyway because staying would destroy you? If you have, you know exactly why I did what I did. And if you haven't, I hope you never have to. But if that day comes, I hope you remember this story. I hope you remember that your value isn't determined by other people's recognition of it. That generosity without boundaries is just self-destruction with better marketing. That sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone face the full weight of their own choices. If this story resonated with you, if you've been where I was or know someone who has hit that like button, subscribe to hear more stories about finding your strength in the breaking points. And comment below, tell me your story. What was your breaking point? What was your grandmother's necklace? What did you finally refuse to tolerate? Because every one of us has something precious that we've let others treat as worthless. And every one of us deserves to reclaim it, repair it, and wear it with the pride of someone who finally understands that the only approval that matters is our own.